You believe you control how people treat you. That is an illusion. We spend our lives weaving that illusion through emotional connections. We laugh when expected. We explain, defend, and soften ourselves. We call it reading people, but the truth is darker. They are reading us, collecting data, adjusting their behavior to fit into our world. Here is the question no one asks. If you stopped reacting entirely, who would the people around you become? Would they be polite, respectful, or would the darker aspects of their personality finally surface? Count how many times you have laughed out of expectation this week. Count how many times you softened yourself just to keep the peace. Now ask yourself, was that actually your choice? Or were you trained, slowly, invisibly, to respond exactly how others need you to respond? They need your reactions. Your reactions give them power. Your reactions give them validation. Your reactions give them control. Take your reactions away, and you don't just confuse people, you destabilize them. Remove your emotional connection and watch what happens. Some will test you, some will push you, some will disappear entirely, and some will finally reveal who they have always been. I wanted to stop imagining this. I wanted to stop theorizing. I used reality as my garden. I became emotionally invisible. No reactions, no validation, no signals, just silence for 7 days. What did I discover? It wasn't self-improvement. It was a psychological unmasking. The moment the emotional mirror disappeared, the illusion collapsed. People showed me who they were because they no longer had me to tell them who they were. Once you see this, you cannot go back. Before we go deeper, if this kind of content speaks to you, this isn't just my channel, it's yours. Every thumbs up tells YouTube this truth deserves to be seen. Every subscribe bell builds a community that understands what most people ignore. And every share spreads awareness to someone who's still trapped in the illusion. If you want to go even deeper into this world, join the channel membership and unlock exclusive content made only for those who are ready to see beyond the surface. Now, let's begin the experiment. Day 1. Everything becomes unclear. You may believe others appreciate your personality and who you have become. But have you ever wondered if people are simply tolerant of you and your behaviors because of how you respond to them? What happens when they anticipate your smiling face and you refuse to offer it? What happens when they expect laughter and you deny them that? What happens when they look to you for comfort or support and you no longer provide what they've come to expect? Ultimately, the question isn't about you. It's about what happens to the people around you when your presence is removed as an emotional feeding ground. Did you think that would happen on day 1? You probably didn't, because the day started out deceptively quiet. It felt soft, small, inconsequential, until it wasn't. The moment you place limits on how you show emotion, or take it all away entirely, everything in that space, in that room, changes. And like magnetism, you notice an immediate shift. It begins with something simple, a conversation you've had 100 times before. Same person, same tone, same environment. But this time, you don't react. No smile, no nod, no emotional signal, just silence. And suddenly something breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but you see it in their eyes, confusion. Here's a truth no one tells you. Human interaction is not built on words. It's built on feedback loops. Every time someone speaks to you, they aren't just talking. They're watching, measuring, adjusting. They say something. You react. They calibrate their next move. It's a constant loop. A game of emotional ping pong. The moment you stop hitting the ball back, the game collapses. Imagine talking to a mirror that suddenly stops reflecting. That's what you become. Unreadable, unpredictable, uncomfortable, and people hate that. On day 1, people expected the usual version of you, the version they're familiar with. The one who smiles at the right moments, responds with the right tone, validates without even thinking. But instead, they got nothing, and nothing is loud. A friend jokes. Normally, you'd laugh. This time, you just look at them, not aggressively, not coldly, just neutrally. And you see it happen. A split-second delay. Their smile freezes. Their brain starts searching. Did that land wrong? Are you okay? Did I say something weird? That's the first crack. Because here's the invisible mechanism. People don't just communicate with you. They depend on your reactions to feel stable. Your emotions are like a map. They tell others, this is safe, this is funny, this is normal. But when the map disappears, they're lost. Think about it. Why do people repeat jokes when you don't laugh? Why do they explain themselves more when you don't respond? Why do they grow uncomfortable when you go quiet? Because your reaction isn't just feedback, it's validation. Without it, they feel exposed. You notice it everywhere. Small conversations become awkward. Simple interactions stretch longer than they should. Silences start to feel heavy. Not because silence is uncomfortable, but because unreadable silence is threatening. Then comes the tension. Subtle, but real. People begin watching you more closely. Their tone shifts. Their body language tightens. It's as if they're trying to solve you, but you're giving them nothing to work with. And here's where it gets harder than you expected, because it's not just them, it's you. Your brain screams at you to react, to smile, to nod, to say something, to fix the awkwardness. You've been conditioned your entire life to keep interactions smooth, to make people comfortable, to respond. Suppressing that instinct feels unnatural, like holding your breath underwater. You feel the pressure building, the urge to break, to return to normal. But you don't. And that's when the real realization hits. People are not just reacting to you. They are using your emotions to regulate themselves. Wait, what? Think about it. When someone tells a story, they look at your face. Why? To see if it's interesting. When someone makes a joke, they watch your reaction. Why? To confirm it's funny. When someone shares something emotional, they scan your expression. Why? To feel understood. Your emotions are not just yours. They are tools others use. And the moment you stop providing them, people don't just feel confused, they feel disconnected. Here's the uncomfortable question. If your reactions disappeared completely, how many of your interactions would still feel natural? How many people would still behave the same? How many relationships are built on genuine connection? And how many are built on emotional exchange? This is where it gets personal, because now you start seeing it in your own life. You're in a group conversation. Normally you'd engage, add energy, react. But now, you just observe. And something strange happens. The conversation continues, but it feels off, like a performance missing an audience. People talk, but they keep glancing at you, waiting, expecting, needing something. And you realize something unsettling. You were never just part of the conversation. You were fueling it. Without your reactions, the energy drops, the rhythm breaks, the dynamic changes. And that's when the tests begin. Small ones, barely noticeable, but they're there. Someone teases you, a little sharper than usual, waiting for a reaction. You give none. Someone repeats a joke, slightly louder this time. Still nothing. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" But it's not concern. It's curiosity mixed with discomfort. They're trying to pull you back into the loop, back into predictability, back into control. Because that's what emotional reactions really are. Control signals. Here's a truth most people will never admit. When people know how you react, they know how to handle you, how to influence you, how to move around you. But when you remove that, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability makes people uneasy. Let me show you how this plays out. You're sitting with a colleague at work. They're used to your usual responses. Engaged, polite, responsive. Today, you're different. They start talking about something trivial. You listen, but you don't react. No nodding. No, yeah. No smile. Just stillness. They pause. Oh, right, they say. You simply look at them neutral. Now they shift. They start explaining more, adding details that weren't necessary. Their tone becomes slightly defensive. Why? Because your silence made them question themselves. And that's the moment it clicks. You're not just removing emotion. You're removing certainty. And humans hate uncertainty. Everything we do socially is built on reducing it. We smile to show safety. We react to show understanding. We express to show alignment. But when you remove all of that, you create a void. And people rush to fill it. Some with words, some with behavior, some with tension, but no one is comfortable inside it. This is the shift. The moment where you stop seeing interactions as simple exchanges and start seeing them as systems, loops, patterns, dependencies. You realize something powerful and slightly disturbing. Most people don't just want to connect with you. They want to read you. Because reading you gives them control. And when they can't read you, they don't know who they are in that moment. Let that sink in. Now everything starts to look different. They don't want you. They want your reactions. They don't seek connection. They seek confirmation. They don't fear silence. They fear not understanding you. And you've just taken that away. But this is only day one. And already something is shifting. Not just in them, but in you. Because the longer you stay silent, the more you start to see. And what you're about to see next is not confusion. It's something far more revealing. Because when people can't read you, they don't stop trying. They escalate. And that's when their real nature begins to show. Day 2. The energy shift. Are you under the impression that when you do not respond to noise, it gives you a sense of safety? If so, then what if noise actually creates danger for you? Why do your friends push you further when you choose not to respond? What causes them to use more energy? To become sharper with their words? To try harder than usual? What makes them stop speaking to you directly and instead begin trying to break into who you are? For some reason, an absence of confusion continues to be present as you move into day 2. Only now it exists at a higher intensity. You can feel the pressure from all around, even when no one says a word. The dynamics are different now. Conversations are shorter, colder, less fluid than they were before this point. Something has shifted inside every interaction that takes place. Because it has, here's the invisible mechanism no one notices. Every interaction runs on emotional energy exchange, not words, not logic, energy. You give a reaction, they receive it. They respond, you reflect it back. It's a loop, a constant back and forth current. But now, you've cut the wire. A coworker speaks to you. You respond with just enough words to function. No warmth, no enthusiasm, no emotional tone. They pause. All right, they say. Then silence. The conversation dies early. Because there's no energy to sustain it. Imagine a fire. Normally both people bring wood. You bring reactions. They bring words. The fire grows. But now you've stopped bringing wood. So the fire fades faster than expected. Short conversations aren't a coincidence. They're a symptom. No emotion means no fuel. But something else happens, something more intense. People don't simply accept the silence. They start fighting it. Because humans are not designed to tolerate emotional voids. They try to fill them. For you notice it in the way people talk to you. They lean in more. Their tone sharpens. They repeat themselves. They exaggerate. They try harder. Not to communicate, to extract. A friend tells a story. You stay neutral, no reaction. They laugh at their own punchline. Glance at you, still nothing. So they say it again. Louder this time, more animated, almost desperate. Why? Because your silence is rejecting their reality. They're throwing hooks into the water and nothing is biting. So they throw bigger hooks. The less you react, the harder they try. But here's where it gets darker. The tone begins to shift, subtly at first, then more obvious. Passive-aggressive comments slip in, small, sharp, almost disguised. "Oh, you're quiet today, you good," or just ignoring everyone. "Wow, someone's in a mood." These aren't innocent, they're probes. Think of them as pressure tests. People are trying to locate your emotional boundaries, where you'll react, where you'll break. And when you don't, they push further, because your lack of reaction creates uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers discomfort, and discomfort triggers control attempts. So people escalate. They joke harder, tease more aggressively, make comments that normally would get a response. But you don't give it, and now they're not comfortable anymore. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't just enjoy your emotions, they depend on them. Your reactions regulate their confidence. Your expressions stabilize their identity. Your feedback reassures their position in the interaction. Take that away, and they start to feel exposed. Have you ever noticed how someone gets annoyed when you don't laugh at their joke? Or defensive when you don't agree? Or uncomfortable when you stay silent? That's not random. That's dependence, and now you're seeing it in real time. But this is where it becomes personal, because it's not just them changing, it's how you feel. At first, there's a strange sense of power. You're not reacting. You're not giving anything away. No one can read you. No one can predict you. You feel in control, like you've stepped outside the game. But then something else creeps in, slowly, quietly. Isolation, because while you've removed emotional access, you've also removed connection. People talk to you less, engage less, stay shorter. Not because they hate you, but because they don't know what to do with you. You've become difficult to interact with. You're like a locked door in a hallway full of open ones. People try once, maybe twice, then they move on. Power isolates. Now let's go deeper, because there's a moment on day 2 that hits differently. A moment that makes you stop and think. Wait, is this how it really works? You're in a casual conversation. Someone says something slightly provocative, something that would normally get a reaction from you. You stay neutral. They pause, then smile. But it's different, tighter, less natural. Then they say something sharper, a little more direct, almost like a test. Still nothing from you. And then it hits you. They're not talking anymore, they're probing. When your emotional responses disappear, conversations turn into experiments. People stop expressing. They start testing. And here's the part that should disturb you. How often do people only behave nicely because of your reactions? How much of their behavior is shaped by what they know you'll tolerate? How much of your identity is just a reflection of how others expect you to respond? Let that sink in, because now you're not just observing others. You're seeing yourself differently. Picture this. You're sitting with someone you know well, someone who's used to your energy, your reactions, your engagement. They start talking like usual. You listen, but you give nothing back. At first they keep going. Then they slow down. Then they start adjusting. Did I say something wrong? They ask. You shake your head. No emotion. They laugh awkwardly, then try again. More energy this time, more expression. Still nothing from you. Now their posture changes. They lean back, cross their arms. Their tone becomes slightly defensive. All right, guess you're not in the mood. And just like that, they withdraw. Conversation over. What just happened? You didn't attack them. You didn't reject them. You didn't do anything. You just didn't react. And that alone was enough to disconnect the interaction. This is the shift. You realize something powerful and uncomfortable. People don't just communicate with you. They feed off your emotional responses. Take that away, and the interaction starves. You are not just part of the system, you are the battery. And when you unplug yourself, everything starts to flicker. Now the awareness hits deeper. They don't want you. They want your attention. They don't seek connection. They seek response. They don't fear silence. They fear losing control of the interaction, and you've taken that control away. But here's the twist. The more you do this, the more something changes inside you. You start to feel detached, observant, almost above it, but also alone. Because the same thing that gives you power is the same thing that removes warmth. And now you're standing in a strange place, untouchable but unreachable. And this is only day 2, because what comes next isn't just people trying harder. It's people pushing further. And when people stop trying to get your attention, they start trying to break your silence. And that's when things stop being subtle. Day 3, the tests. You think people respect your silence. But what if they're actually trying to break it? What happens when someone realizes they can't read you, can't influence you, can't predict you? Do they step back, or do they push harder? And the real question, how far will someone go just to get a reaction out of you? By day 3, something shifts. It's no longer confusion. It's no longer curiosity. It becomes a test. You'll feel it before you understand it. The tone of conversations changes. Not softer, but sharper, but deliberate. People aren't just talking anymore. They're aiming. A comment lands slightly off. A joke feels a little more personal. A remark carries a hidden edge. And you notice something strange. They're watching you more closely than ever, not to connect, but to detect. Here's the invisible mechanism. When people lose emotional access to you, they don't give up. They probe. Think of it like this. You've become a locked system. No visible input, no output. So now they start pressing buttons, random ones at first, then more targeted. They say something playful. No reaction. They try sarcasm. Nothing. Then something slightly disrespectful. Still nothing. And that's when the real testing begins. You're a wall now, and people don't just walk away from walls. They knock, they push, they hit, just to see if it moves. Silence invites pressure. Here's what you start to realize. People don't just want connection. They want control of the emotional flow. And when that control disappears, they try to regain it. Someone teases you. Normally, you'd smile, push back, play along. That's the script. But now, you just look at them. Calm, neutral, unmoved. They laugh, but it's forced. Then they repeat it a little louder, a little sharper, still nothing. Now the tone changes. Wow, you've changed. That's not an observation, that's pressure. Because what they're really saying is, go back to how you used to react. They're not reacting to you. They're reacting to the loss of control. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because some of these tests don't feel harmless anymore. They feel intentional. A comment that borders on disrespect. A joke that hits a little too close. A tone that feels slightly dismissive. And for the first time, you feel the urge to respond, to defend, to correct, to restore balance. But you don't. And that's when the internal battle begins. Because now it's not about them. It's about you. Your mind starts racing. Should I say something? Am I letting this slide too much? Is this weakness or control? You feel the tension building inside you, not outside, because you've been conditioned your entire life to react, to defend your identity, to protect your image, to respond when challenged. And now you're doing the opposite. It feels unnatural, like standing still, while someone slowly steps into your space. But here's the deeper mechanism. Reactions are not just emotional. They are signals of boundaries. When you react, you're telling people, this is where the line is. But when you don't react, that line disappears. And people start searching for it. You've removed the fence. Now people are walking forward just to see where the edge is. No reaction means no visible boundary. And that's where things get dangerous, because not everyone tests lightly. Some push harder, more directly, more aggressively. Your silence doesn't just confuse people. It triggers something deeper, insecurity. When people can't read you, they start questioning themselves. Did I say something wrong? Do they like me? Am I being judged? And insecurity doesn't stay quiet. It acts, sometimes through overcompensation, sometimes through withdrawal, and sometimes through dominance. They try to regain control by pushing you, testing you, challenging you. Have you ever noticed how some people become slightly disrespectful when they're unsure about you? That's not confidence. That's insecurity, looking for control. And now you're seeing it clearly. But here's the part that hits deeper, because this isn't just about some people. This is about patterns. How many times in your life have people tested you just to see how far they could go? How many times did your reactions teach them your limits? How many times did you unknowingly train people how to treat you? Let that sit with you, because now you're not reacting. And for the first time, you're seeing the raw version of behavior, unfiltered, unadjusted, unmasked. Picture this. You're in a group setting. The energy is casual, light, normal. Someone throws a joke your way, slightly teasing. You don't react. They grin, look around. Try again. Damn, nothing today. Still nothing. Now the room shifts. Others are watching, waiting. The same person leans in, voice slightly louder. Or maybe you just can't take a joke anymore. There it is, a line crossed. Normally you'd respond, defend, push back, rebalance the dynamic. But you don't. You just look at them, calm, still, unmoved. And something strange happens. Their confidence drops, just slightly, almost invisible. They laugh again, but it's weaker, forced. Then they look away. Conversation shifts. And just like that, the test ends. What just happened? They pushed. Expected resistance, expected engagement, expected something, but you gave them nothing. And without resistance, their pressure collapsed. This is the shift. You start to understand something powerful and slightly unsettling. Reactions are not just emotional. They are leverage. When you react, you give people something to work with, to push against, to manipulate, to control. But when you don't, they lose grip. You're no longer a rope in a tug of war. You've dropped the rope, and suddenly they're pulling against nothing. Now the awareness sharpens. They don't tease you for fun. They tease you to measure you. They don't provoke you randomly. They provoke you to locate your limits. They don't push you because they're strong. They push you because they're uncertain. And you've become the one thing they can't measure. But here's the twist. The more you hold this position, the more intense the tests become. Because some people don't stop when they lose control. They escalate. They go deeper, more personal, more direct. And now you're standing at a critical point. Silence is no longer just observation. It's resistance. And resistance always triggers a stronger response. So the question becomes, how far will they go to get something out of you? And more importantly, how long can you hold the line before something inside you reacts? Day 3 isn't about confusion anymore. It's about pressure. And what comes next isn't just testing. It's exposure. Because when people realize they can't control you, they start revealing who they really are. Day 4. The distance. You think people leave because you did something wrong. But what if they leave because they can no longer read you? What happens when your presence stops feeling familiar? Why do some people suddenly disappear, while others become strangely careful around you? And the most uncomfortable question, were they ever truly connected to you, or just to the version of you they understood? By day 4, something shifts again. But this time, it's quieter. No more constant probing, no more obvious tests, no more pressure to break your silence. Instead, there is distance. You start noticing it in small ways. People don't approach you as often. Conversations don't start naturally anymore. Interactions feel shorter, safer, controlled. And some people, they simply disappear. No explanation, no conflict, no clear reason. They just stop engaging. At first, it feels subtle. Then it becomes obvious. You walk into a space where people used to greet you. Now they glance, then look away. You send a message. It gets a reply, but it's dry, minimal, detached. You realize something strange. They're not reacting to you anymore. They're avoiding uncertainty. Here's the invisible mechanism. Humans don't just connect with people. They connect with predictability. When someone knows how you react, they feel safe around you. They know what to expect. They understand the rules of interacting with you. But when you remove your emotional signals, you remove the rules. And without rules, people feel uncomfortable. You've turned a familiar road into a foggy path. Same destination, but now no one knows how to walk it. Familiarity creates comfort. Unpredictability creates distance. Let's break it down. Before this experiment, people knew you. Or at least, they thought they did. They knew when you'd smile, when you'd laugh, when you'd react. That predictability gave them control. Not in an obvious way, but in a subtle, unconscious way. Now that control is gone. And instead of trying to regain it, some people choose the easier path. They withdraw. Because interacting with you now requires effort, awareness, uncertainty. And most people don't want that. You're in a social setting. Someone who normally talks to you doesn't approach. They see you. You see them. There's a moment. And then they turn away. Why? Because they don't know what version of you they'll get. You've become a locked screen, and people don't want to guess the password. People avoid what they can't decode. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Not everyone avoids you. Not everyone avoids you. Some people do the opposite. They become extremely polite, careful with their words, measured with their tone, almost cautious. It feels unnatural, like they're walking on invisible glass around you. They don't joke the same way. They don't tease. They don't push. They keep everything safe. Why? Because your silence has changed how they perceive you. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer easy. You're no longer readable. And that creates a different kind of response. Respect, perhaps. Fear, possibly. But definitely distant. When people can't understand you, they don't always move closer. Sometimes they step back. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Emotional connection isn't built on depth. It's built on exchange. Take away the exchange, and even strong connections start to weaken. Think about it. How many of your relationships are maintained by constant emotional feedback? Smiling, reacting, engaging, reassuring. Remove that, and what's left? Silence. And silence is a test. Most relationships fail. Now let's go deeper, because this is where it starts to hit you, not intellectually, but emotionally. The loneliness. It doesn't come suddenly. It creeps in. At first you felt powerful, detached, observant, but now you feel something else, disconnected. Because while you've removed emotional access from others, you've also removed emotional expression from yourself. And that creates a barrier, not just for them, but for you. You've built a wall to protect yourself, but now you're standing behind it alone. Protection and isolation often look the same. Here's the question that hits harder than expected. Are people pulling away because of you, or because of what you're no longer giving them? And deeper than that, were they ever truly connected to you, or just to the emotional experience you provided? Let that sit with you, because now you're not just observing behavior, you're questioning reality. Picture this. You're sitting with someone you've known for a long time, someone who used to be comfortable around you, open, relaxed, natural. Now they're different. They speak carefully. Pause more. Choose their words. You stay neutral, unchanged. At first, they try to engage. Ask questions, start conversations. But each time, your responses are minimal, flat, emotionless. So they adjust. They stop joking, stop sharing deeply, stop opening up. Eventually, they stop trying. The silence between you grows, not loud but heavy. And then they say something simple. You've been different lately, not accusing, not emotional, just distant. You don't react. They nod, look away, And in that moment, something shifts. Not dramatically, not visibly, but you feel it. The connection weakens. Not because of conflict, not because of disagreement, but because of absence. What just happened? You didn't push them away. You didn't reject them. You didn't do anything. You just stopped feeding the connection. And without that, it slowly faded. This is the shift. You start to see something most people never notice. Relationships don't always break from conflict. Sometimes they fade from a lack of emotional exchange. A fire doesn't always go out because of water. Sometimes it dies because no one adds wood. Now the awareness sharpens. They don't stay because of who you are. They stay because of how you make them feel. They don't connect to your silence. They connect to your reactions. They don't fear losing you. They fear losing access to your emotional energy. And you've removed that access. But here's the twist. The more distance you create, the more something inside you starts to question everything. Who actually cared? Who was just comfortable? Who was real? And the most unsettling question of all, if you stop giving people what they want emotionally, how many of them will still choose to stay? Day 4 isn't about pressure anymore. It's about absence. And absence reveals more than presence ever could. But this is only the beginning. Because when some people walk away, others do something very different. They don't distance themselves, they move closer. And what they reveal next is far more dangerous than silence. Day 5. The power dynamic changes. You think respect comes from being liked. But what if it comes from being unreadable? What happens when people stop interrupting you, not because they agree, but because they are unsure? Why do conversations suddenly become careful, precise, almost strategic? And the question you can no longer ignore. Are they respecting you, or are they quietly afraid of you? By day 5, something shifts again. But this time it's not distance, it's power. You feel it immediately, not in words, but in behavior. People let you finish your sentences. They don't cut you off like they used to. They pause before speaking, choose their words more carefully. It's subtle but undeniable. Something about you has changed, and they feel it. Here's the invisible mechanism. When people cannot predict your reactions, they start to calculate their behavior. Before, interactions were automatic, fast, casual, unfiltered. Now they are intentional, measured, controlled. Why? Because unpredictability creates perceived risk, and humans adjust around risk. Someone used to interrupt you mid-sentence without thinking, without hesitation. Now they wait. They let you finish. They even nod slightly, not out of politeness, but out of uncertainty. You've gone from being background noise to becoming something they have to pay attention to. When you become unreadable, you become significant. But here's where it gets more complex. Not everyone responds the same way. Some people show you something that looks like respect. Others show something that feels like distance mixed with caution. And the line between those two is thinner than you think. Because what you're experiencing isn't pure respect, it's controlled interaction. People aren't necessarily valuing you more. They're just adjusting to you differently. And sometimes that adjustment feels like respect, but underneath it might be hesitation, uncertainty, even subtle fear. Think about it. When someone cannot read you, they don't know how you'll react. Will you agree? Will you reject? Will you stay silent? Will you judge? That unpredictability creates tension, and tension changes behavior. You're in a group discussion. Before, people spoke over each other, cut in, dominated. Now they look at you before speaking. They pause. They wait. You haven't said anything differently. You've just stopped reacting. And that alone shifted the entire dynamic. You didn't raise your voice, you lowered your signals, and somehow that made you louder. Control doesn't always come from action. Sometimes it comes from absence. But now comes the part that hits deeper. Because while the outside world is shifting, something inside you is changing too. You start to feel that sense of control, of detachment, of observation. You're not pulled into conversations anymore. You're not emotionally affected the same way. You're not reacting. And because of that, you're not being influenced. That feels powerful, but also strange, because something else is fading. Your natural responses, your spontaneous reactions, your emotional presence. You're not just controlling your emotions, you're suppressing. And now the question begins to creep in. Is this strength or something else? Let's go deeper. Here's the dark truth no one talks about. Emotional control doesn't just change how others see you. It changes who you become. The more you suppress your reactions, the more you disconnect from them. At first, it's intentional, a choice, a strategy. But over time, it starts to feel natural, automatic, default. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because now you're not just unreadable to others. You're becoming harder to read even to yourself. If you stop expressing emotions long enough, do you still feel them the same way? Or do they start to fade? If people treat you better when you're emotionally distant, what does that say about how they treated you before? Are you gaining control or slowly losing connection? Let's make this real. You're in a one-on-one conversation with someone who used to dominate interactions with you, talk over you, control the flow. Today it's different. They start speaking, then stop. Go ahead, they say. You speak, calm, measured, emotionless. They listen. No interruptions. No dismissive reactions. For the first time, they're fully present. And you feel that shift, that subtle reversal. You're no longer reacting to them. They're adjusting to you. But something feels off, because while they're listening more, they're also holding back. Their tone is controlled. Their expressions limited. Their energy reduced. It's like they're interacting with you, but at a distance. Respect, maybe, but also containment. They're not opening up the same way, not engaging the same way, because your silence has changed the rule. And now they're playing differently. You gained control, but you changed the connection. This is the shift. You realize something powerful and slightly unsettling. Power in human interaction isn't always about dominance. It's about emotional positioning. Who reacts more has less control. Who reacts less sets the tone. But here's the trade-off. The less you react, the less you connect. You've stepped out of the emotional current. Now you're standing on the shore, watching everything clearly, untouched, unmoved, but also not fully incited anymore. Clarity often comes at the cost of closeness. Now the realizations hit faster, sharper, more undeniable. They don't interrupt you because they respect you. They pause because they're unsure of you. They listen more because they can't predict you. They adjust because they've lost control of your reactions. They don't connect deeper. They interact more carefully. And you've become something different, not louder, not stronger, but harder to access. And that changes everything. Because now you're standing in a space most people never reach. A space where you can see behavior clearly, patterns clearly, intentions clearly. But at the same time, you're starting to feel something else, distance from them, from the moment, maybe even from yourself. And now the question isn't just about them anymore. It's about you. How long can you stay here? In control, but disconnected, respected, but not fully felt. Day 5 isn't just about power. It's about the cost of it. And what comes next will force you to face something even more uncomfortable. Because when people stop trying to control you and start trying to understand you, they begin to reveal things they were never supposed to show. And that's when the real truth starts to surface. Day 6. The unexpected reactions. You think silence pushes people away. But what if it pulls them closer? What happens when someone can't read you, and instead of leaving, they start revealing themselves? Why do people suddenly open up, confess things, expose emotions you never asked for? And the most unsettling question, are they connecting with you or just projecting onto you? By day 6, the pattern breaks again. But this time it's not distance, not pressure. It's something far more unpredictable. People start talking, not casually, not carefully, but deeply. Things they didn't say before. Things they didn't show before. Things that feel too personal for the moment. And you didn't ask for any of it. It happens suddenly. Someone sits next to you, pauses, looks at you for a second longer than usual. Then they start speaking. I don't usually tell people this. And just like that, they begin to open up. Not because you encouraged them, not because you responded, but because you didn't. Here's the invisible mechanism. When you remove your emotional signals, you become a psychological mirror. A surface with no distortion, no interruption, no feedback. And when people face a mirror like that, they don't see you, they see themselves. Someone starts talking about their problems. You don't react. No nodding, no sympathy, no advice. And instead of stopping, they go deeper. More detail, more emotion, more exposure. Why? Because your silence isn't blocking them. It's reflecting them. You've become a still lake. And when people look into it, they don't see waves, they see their own reflection. Silence doesn't stop expression. It amplifies it. But here's where it gets strange. These interactions don't feel normal. They feel intense. People start projecting things onto you, assumptions, emotions, intentions. You seem like you understand. You're probably judging me right now. You get what I'm saying, right? But you haven't said anything. And yet they're building an entire narrative around you. When people don't get feedback, their brain fills in the gaps. And what do they fill it with? Themselves. Their fears, their thoughts, their insecurities. Your silence becomes a canvas, and they start painting. When you give no signal, people project their own. Now let's go deeper, because this is where it starts to feel unsettling. You realize something disturbing. People aren't responding to you anymore. They're responding to their interpretation of you. And that interpretation is completely shaped by them. If someone thinks you're judging them, is that about you or about how they judge themselves? If someone feels understood by you, even when you say nothing, what are they really connecting with? How many of your relationships are built on projection, not reality? Let that sink in, because now you're seeing people differently. Not just what they say, but what they reveal unintentionally. And the more silent you stay, the more they reveal. Picture this. You're sitting with someone in a quiet setting. Not close, not distant, just there. They start talking casually, small things, surface level. You stay neutral, listening still. A pause, then something shifts. Their tone softens. Their words slow down. I've been thinking a lot lately, they say. And then it happens. They go deeper. They start talking about things they don't usually share. Doubts, fears, things they keep hidden. You don't interrupt. You don't react. And somehow, that makes them go even further. They look at you, searching your face, trying to read something, anything. But there's nothing there. So they keep talking, filling the silence, revealing more. And by the end, they've exposed parts of themselves they didn't plan to. They stop, look at you. That felt weirdly easy to say. And you realize something. You didn't make it easy. You just didn't stop it. What just happened? You became a space, a container, a mirror. And they poured themselves into it. This is the shift. You start to understand something deeper. People don't always need connection to open up. They need space. And silence creates space. But here's the darker layer. This isn't always healthy. Some people aren't connecting with you. They're unloading onto you, projecting onto you, using you as a surface without truly seeing you. And that creates a strange feeling. You're present but not involved, seen but not known. You're a screen in a dark room. People project their stories onto you. Watch them, react to them. But the screen itself remains untouched. You can be the center of someone's experience and still be invisible. Now the awareness sharpens again. They don't open up because they trust you. They open up because you don't interrupt them. They don't reveal themselves because of connection. They reveal themselves because of silence. They don't see you clearly. They see what they bring into the moment. And you're carrying all of it, without reacting, without releasing, without expressing. And that weight starts to build. Being unreadable isn't just power, it's pressure. You're holding space, absorbing energy, watching everything, reacting to nothing. And that creates a strange tension inside you. Because now you're not just detached, you're overloaded with unspoken emotions, unreleased reactions, unprocessed moments. How long can you hold everything without letting anything out? Silence doesn't just affect others, it affects you. And now you're starting to feel it. The weight of being the observer, the mirror, the surface. And the more people reveal themselves to you, the more you realize something unsettling. You're seeing them clearly, but no one is seeing you. And that creates a new kind of distance, not physical, not social, but psychological. Because now you exist in two worlds. The external world where people talk, reveal, project, and your internal world where everything stays contained, unspoken, unshared, unseen. And the gap between those two worlds is growing. Day 6 isn't about control anymore. It's about exposure. Not yours, but theirs. And the more they expose themselves, the more you start to understand something dangerous. People don't just reveal who they are when they feel safe. Sometimes they reveal who they are when they think no one is truly watching. You're watching everything without reacting, without interrupting, without existing in their perception. And that makes you something else entirely. Not just unreadable, but invisible. When you become invisible, people stop filtering themselves, they stop performing. And that's when you see the truth. The raw version, the unedited version, the version they never meant to show. But here's the question that lingers. What happens when you've seen too much and you can't unsee it? Because tomorrow you won't just observe behavior. You'll start recognizing patterns. And once you see the pattern, you can never go back to seeing people the same way again. Day 7. The truth revealed. You think you want to see people clearly, but what if clarity comes at a cost you are not ready to pay? What happens when the experiment ends, but the truth does not go away? Who actually stayed when you stopped giving them what they wanted? And the question that hits hardest, if you go back to being normal, are you lying to them or to yourself? Day 7 does not feel like a day. It feels like a conclusion. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. Because now you are no longer guessing. You are no longer observing randomly. You are no longer experimenting. You know, the patterns are clear, too clear. And once you see patterns in people, you cannot unsee them. Here is the invisible mechanism. Human behavior is not random. It is adaptive. People do not treat you based on who you are. They treat you based on what they can get from you, emotionally, socially, psychologically. Someone who used to joke with you constantly stopped. Not because they changed, but because the reward disappeared. No laughter, no engagement, no emotional return. So they adjusted, or they left. You did not change the players, you changed the rules of the game. When the reward disappears, behavior reveals itself. And that is what Day 7 gives you. Clarity, brutal, uncomfortable clarity. You start categorizing people without even trying. Those who stayed, those who adapted, those who disappeared. And the differences between them are impossible to ignore. Some people remained quietly, without forcing interaction, without testing you, without pulling anything from you. They did not need your reactions. They simply existed with you. Others adjusted, more careful, more measured, still present but different. They found a way to interact without depending on your emotional feedback. And then there were the ones who vanished. Not dramatically, not angrily, just gone. Fewer messages, less interaction, less presence until eventually nothing. When you removed emotional access, you removed their reason to stay. Let that sink in. If someone disappears when you stop reacting, were they ever there for you or just for what you gave them? How many relationships in your life are sustained by your emotional effort? And the one that cuts deepest, if you stopped giving completely, who would still choose you? Because now it is personal. This is not about people anymore. This is about your people. And what you are seeing is not easy to accept. You realize something disturbing. Most people do not connect with your presence. They connect with your participation. Take away your participation, and the connection weakens. Emotional exchange is the glue. Not history, not time, not even loyalty, but emotion. Remove it, and you test the foundation. And most foundations are weaker than they seem. You start replaying moments in your head, conversations, reactions, patterns, and suddenly everything makes sense. Why some people pushed you before? Why some tried to provoke you? Why some withdrew? Why some opened up? It was not random. It was all response-driven. You were the electricity, and they were just responding to the current. Now the current is gone, and you see who stays in the dark and who leaves. But here is where it hits hardest. Because the clarity does not just reveal others, it reveals you. You are sitting alone, not physically but mentally. You scroll through your messages, look at names, conversations. You notice something. Certain people have not reached out, not once. Others sent something, but it felt empty, routine, forced. And then there is one person. They did not change. Same tone, same presence, same energy. No pressure, no withdrawal, no performance. Just consistency. And it stands out more than anything else, because now it is rare. You realize something in that moment. You do not need many people. You need the right ones. But even that realization comes with a cost, because now you see clearly how many were not right. This is the shift. You understand something deeper than behavior. You understand dependency. People depend on your emotions to define their experience with you. Remove that, and they either adapt or disconnect. You were a source. Now you are a filter, and only certain people pass through. Clarity filters. It does not comfort. Now the realizations come fast, sharp, unavoidable. They did not stay because of you. They stayed because of how you made them feel. They did not leave because you changed. They left because the exchange stopped. They did not respect your silence. They adjusted to your unpredictability. They did not connect deeper. They revealed their limits. And you have changed too. Not just in how you see others, but in how you feel. Because there is something no one tells you about becoming untouchable. It comes with a price. You feel it now. That emotional exhaustion, that quiet emptiness, that sense of distance from everything. Because while you have gained control, you have lost something else. Spontaneity, warmth, effortless connection. You are not reacting, but you are also not fully experiencing. Is control worth it if it disconnects you from the moment? Is being respected better than being genuinely connected? And the one that lingers. Who are you when you remove your emotions completely? Now you are standing at the end of the experiment. And the truth is clear. Emotions are not weakness. They are currency. And you have just stopped spending, which means everything in your life has been forced to reveal its true value. Some things held up, some did not. But the most important realization is this. You cannot go back to not knowing. You can pretend you can react again. You can smile, laugh, engage. But now you will always see what is underneath. And that changes everything. Day 7 is not the end. It is the moment you realize this was never just an experiment. It was a lens, a way of seeing. And once you see people without emotional filters, you can never fully trust what you saw before. But here is the real question. Now that you know the truth, how will you choose to use it? Control is one thing, but what comes next is something far more dangerous. choice. Aftermath. Returning to emotion. You open your eyes and it feels different. The world has not changed. The people have not changed, but you have. How will they react now, after 7 days of silence? Will they remember the old you, the warm, responsive version? Or are they already reshaped by what they discovered? When your emotions disappeared, you are about to find out. The invisible mechanism of this day is subtle but powerful. Emotions are a language, and for 7 days you were silent. You spoke in absence, in unreadable stillness. Now you speak again. You smile, you laugh, you respond, you react, but something has shifted. The coworker who used to interrupt constantly now pauses before speaking. You notice the hesitation in their tone, a tiny flicker of caution. They are testing, just as you tested them. You were a black mirror before. Now you are a prism, and everyone's light passes through differently. Emotion, when reintroduced, refracts reality. At first, it feels like victory. People smile more carefully. Conversations are more intentional. No one takes your reactions for granted. But the truth is darker, because now you see patterns you never saw before. The manipulation, the subtle neediness, the desperation masked as friendliness, the hidden agendas buried in casual words. The friend who always jokes about your choices, their humor now feels like a probe, testing if you will snap back, testing if you still care, testing your threshold. The colleague who suddenly praises everything you do, perhaps admiration, or perhaps they are recalibrating, trying to regain lost influence. How many of these interactions were ever genuine? How many depended entirely on the emotional energy you provided? How many will dissolve now that you are aware? You meet a friend for coffee. The first few minutes are normal. But as the conversation unfolds, subtle signals emerge. They linger on topics that make you uncomfortable, laugh at your hesitation, try to draw reactions out of you. You smile. You nod. You respond minimally. They falter. Their comfort depends on you. And now that they realize you are watching, analyzing, detached, the dynamic has shifted. They are performing for you, not with you. And that is when it hits. You have become the silent arbiter of emotional currency. The shift is unavoidable. You understand that emotions are power, but power without control is chaos. When you were unreadable, people's behavior revealed itself. Now, as you return to emotion, you control how that power is expressed. Imagine holding a fire in your hands. For 7 days, you let it die down. You saw who tried to steal the warmth, who was afraid of the heat, who did not care at all. Now you ignite it again. But this time you decide who touches the flame. People do not want your presence, they want your reaction. Silence exposes the invisible debts we owe each other emotionally. Consistency becomes suspicion when unpredictability is familiar. Attention is currency, and you are both the spender and the bank. Returning to emotion is not a return to normal. It is a recalibration of control. And here's the unsettling part. Even genuine relationships now feel filtered. You notice the neediness lurking behind compliments, the subtle attempts to elicit laughter, the quiet efforts to regain lost emotional leverage. Your presence is no longer just comfort. It is influence. You begin to ask yourself, are the people around me authentic, or are they performing? Am I giving warmth freely, or am I calculating its impact? Is connection still about love, or has it become about control? You pause. You reflect. The final revelation settles like a weight in your chest. Emotions are power. Not inherently good or bad, neutral. But their value lies in mastery. When you wield them consciously, you see the invisible architecture of relationships. You see who leans on you, who balances themselves, and who manipulates the system. The power is not in withholding emotion forever. That is cruelty. The power is in choosing how and when to express it. That evening, you call a family member. Normally, you would flood the conversation with warmth, reassurance, laughter. Today you listen first, you observe, you respond carefully. They are more vulnerable than usual. They confess, they stumble, they reveal anxieties you never knew existed. And here is the kicker. You feel a strange mix of triumph and guilt. Triumph, because clarity has replaced ignorance. Guilt, because you now hold a measure of influence that is almost unfair. You realize the aftermath of 7 days of silence is not just about others. It is about yourself. You are no longer a passive participant in your social world. You are now a reader of hidden motives, a navigator of emotional currents, a keeper of the unseen ledger. Clarity comes with costs. You can no longer ignore manipulations. You can no longer pretend everyone's behavior is innocent. You can no longer fully immerse yourself without calculation. Yet the reward is undeniable. You see truth. You understand patterns. You hold emotional power consciously for the first time. You smile again. You laugh. You engage. Warmth returns naturally. But in the back of your mind, the question lingers. Now that you have seen the hidden architecture of human behavior, will you ever feel the same innocent connection again? And when someone approaches, will it be friendship, love, or just another transaction of your carefully measured power? The experiment is over. The game is just beginning. And this time, you hold the rules. The psychology behind it. You think you understand people. But what if you have been reading them upside down? Why do small silences make people twitch? Why does a single shrug or an unreadable gaze unsettle them more than an argument? Have you ever noticed how someone can practically beg for your approval without saying a word? Today, we peel back the curtain. We look at the machinery behind every twitch, glance, and word. And you will see, it is not about you. It is about them. Humans are wired for emotional feedback. It is the invisible thread connecting minds. We crave it, we rely on it, we feed off it. Imagine it like a game of mirrors. Every smile, frown, or raised eyebrow you give is reflected back. People adjust, calibrate, manipulate themselves based on what they see. The coworker who leans in as you speak, watching your face for approval. A simple nod from you, and their chest puffs slightly. A slight frown, and they shrink back. You are the thermostat. They are the room. Your reactions control the climate. Emotions are social currency, and everyone wants to spend yours. What if silence is the ultimate disruption? When you stopped reacting, it was not emptiness they feared. It was loss of control. They were accustomed to trading emotional currency, and suddenly the bank closed. Have you ever been ignored and felt your stomach tighten? Have you watched someone stumble for words because your response did not arrive on cue? That discomfort you feel when someone is unreadable. Now imagine wielding it deliberately. The dark truth. Most relationships, friendly, romantic, even professional, are powered by emotional transactions. Reactions are not just signals, they are levers. People do not just want to see you smile. They want your reaction. They want to know where they stand. They want to manipulate, predict, and control. That friend who laughs at your jokes, are they laughing at the joke or at your reaction? That partner who listens attentively, are they understanding or are they calculating? Every word, every gesture, every small expression is a thread in a web of influence, and you have been holding the scissors. During lunch, a colleague tries a subtle jab, a comment meant to provoke a response. Normally, you would have smiled, maybe shrugged, maybe even snapped back playfully. Today, nothing. Their fork pauses midair. They laugh nervously, then stumble over their words. Another coworker steps in, sensing the tension, adjusting the room's atmosphere. The invisible truth is exposed. They depend on your reaction to anchor themselves. Remove it, and chaos spreads. Here is the mechanism in plain view. First, attention is the fuel. Humans are addicted to emotional signals. Without them, they panic. Second, predictability is safety. Familiar reactions reassure them. Unpredictability triggers anxiety. Third, control is the goal. By eliciting reaction, people steer your behavior, decisions, even emotions. Think of every social interaction as a tightrope walk. The rope is emotional feedback. If you sway predictably, they follow. If you pause, hesitate, or stop moving, they wobble. Silence disrupts the balance. It exposes who is walking the tightrope and who is clutching at thin air. What else did you notice during your experiment? That passive friend who seemed casual? They began confessions. Vulnerability spilled because your neutrality reflected their own hidden fears. That partner who constantly tested boundaries? Their provocations escalated when reactions stopped. That sibling who ignored subtle cues? They flailed in discomfort when you refused the usual approval. And here is the most personal punch. You realize this pattern is everywhere. Not just in strangers, not just in friends, but in your family, your workplace, your relationships. Every interaction is subtly anchored to your emotional output. How much of your life has been guided by reactions you gave unconsciously? Who has been feeding on your emotional currency without you realizing it? Are the connections you value genuine, or are they transactional? Now you understand. You are no longer just a participant. You are an observer. You see the threads of influence. You see the desperation masked as affection. You see the subtle calculations behind compliments and reassurances. You were once a mirror, reflecting everything back, unknowingly. Now you are a prism, distorting, revealing, refracting motives into clarity. Emotional mastery does not make you cold. It makes you conscious. People do not want you. They want your emotional response. Silence is a weapon. Unreadability is a shield. Validation is the currency. You are the vault. Predictability is comfort. Unpredictability is revelation. Every interaction is a negotiation. Every reaction is a contract. Some will try to manipulate again. They will test boundaries, charm, provoke. Some will withdraw entirely. And some will reveal themselves fully unguarded because your neutrality made them project their fears. You have seen the invisible architecture, and it is unsettling. You cannot unsee it. You cannot unknow the patterns. You cannot unknow the power of emotions, controlled, measured, and wielded consciously. You lean back, exhausted but alert. The world feels familiar yet alien. You can laugh again, smile again, feel warmth. But now the question hangs like a shadow. If emotions are the ultimate currency, who will still value you for yourself? And who has only ever been buying and selling what you unconsciously gave them? And when the experiment ends, will you ever be able to trust a reaction again? Because now you are the vault, and everyone else is counting coins. The dark side of emotional detachment. You think you have discovered power. You think detachment is strength. But have you felt the hollow echo in your chest when no one's eyes meet yours, not really meet? Have you noticed the subtle retreat in people's behavior when your warmth is withheld? The polite distance that feels like glass between you and the world? And have you wondered, at what cost does this power come? Because here is the truth. Detachment is a double-edged blade. One side cuts them, the other cuts you. The invisible mechanism is deceptively simple. Emotional detachment is a mirror, but not just any mirror. It is a mirror that reflects your absence. People project, react, and adjust. But over time, you start projecting too. You start calibrating yourself not to them, but away from everyone. You stop laughing at the little jokes. You stop sharing excitement. You observe instead of participating. Slowly, friends stop calling. Invitations dwindle. And you feel invisible. Detachment is a dam. It holds back the flood of influence others have on you. But it also blocks the river of connection flowing to you. Power without connection is isolation. Strength without warmth is emptiness. Escalation hits when the admiration and fear you earned begin to mutate. That respectful silence you cultivated now makes casual conversation awkward. People hesitate. They are unsure if they can approach. Your presence is intimidating, not inspiring. When was the last time someone confided in you because they felt safe? How many times have you noticed people stepping back instead of stepping closer? And who have you pushed away without even realizing it? You begin to see the uncomfortable pattern. Emotional numbness can feel like armor, but it is a cage. People respond, but only with caution. They respect you or fear you. They listen, but they do not connect. And somewhere in that, you start losing pieces of yourself. I noticed it at the office first. There was Sarah, usually bubbly, quick to tease, quick to smile. Over the past week, as I held my neutrality, she hesitated in the doorway. Her jokes faltered. Her compliments came slow, measured. One day, she asked a question about me, but it was clinical, detached, like testing a theory rather than sharing curiosity. I realized then she was cautious. She was not reaching for me. She was testing boundaries, unsure if this person in front of her was approachable or untouchable. Detachment is a shadow. At first, it hides you from manipulation. Over time, it darkens your own path. When everyone approaches with caution, you are no longer a participant in life. You are a sentinel on the edge. The dark truth: humans crave emotional resonance. We are wired to respond to subtle cues, to reflect, to connect. When you withhold, you disrupt not just their patterns, but your own. You think you are stronger. You think you are untouchable. But now you notice the loneliness creeping in. Conversations feel shallow. Social gatherings feel like a theater where you play an observer. Even your own laughter feels rehearsed. Have you ever felt a room tense when you did not react? And now, have you noticed your own heart tightening in that silence? Who do you genuinely connect with now? And who is just performing for your reaction? How long before detachment becomes a habit you cannot reverse? The shift comes when awareness hits. Emotional detachment is not just a social tool. It is a psychological trap. The moment you wield it too long, it turns inward. Strength becomes numbness. Defense becomes distance. The mask meant to shield you slowly becomes your face. Detachment is like a firebreak. It stops the flames from spreading, but if left too long, the fire dies out, leaving only ashes. You cannot warm anyone. You cannot feel warmth yourself. The real power is balance. Control without isolation. Presence without overexposure. Connection without vulnerability to manipulation. They do not want you. They want your attention. Silence is not peace. It is a mirror, and mirrors can isolate you. Detachment is armor, but even armor rusts. Control without connection is loneliness dressed as strength. Emotional mastery is not numbness, it is awareness. I saw it in everyday life. Friends I thought I knew avoided me, unsure if they could predict my reactions. Colleagues responded with formal politeness rather than camaraderie. Even my partner hesitated before sharing small joys, small frustrations. My detachment had become a magnet, drawing respect, fear, and distance in equal measure. What had I become? Was I strong, or just alone? Was I admired, or merely tolerated from afar? A friend asked almost hesitantly, "Are you okay? You have changed." The question hit like a blade. They were not curious. They were not caring. They were observing, analyzing. My emotional absence had created a chasm I could not cross alone. That moment crystallized everything. I had spent 7 days seeing others clearly, but in doing so, I had allowed myself to become invisible. I had gained insight, but I had lost presence. I had understood their patterns, but I had erased my own from their perception. The ultimate lesson: balance is not optional. Emotional detachment is a tool, not a lifestyle. It exposes patterns, clarifies motives, and reveals hidden behaviors. But wield it too long, and it corrodes the very relationships you value. Think of emotional detachment like a sword. In your hand, it cuts through manipulation, slicing the threads people use to control you. But if you do not sheath it, if you do not temper it with warmth, it cuts the ones you love, and eventually it cuts you. Power is not in absence. It is in awareness, control, and timely presence. Strength is measured by how you engage, not how you retreat. You sit back, staring at the reflection of yourself in the mirror. There is clarity now, a painful, unflinching clarity. You have seen the mechanics. You have seen the fear, the neediness, the projections. You have wielded detachment as a tool. But here is the shadow hanging over you. If detachment can reveal truth, what happens when you fall too far into it? When absence becomes habit, and walls replace windows, and silence becomes your only companion. Because sometimes the price of power is the very thing you are trying to protect, your humanity. And when humanity slips, who do you become? What this experiment taught me: you think giving your emotions away makes you human. But what if it is the fastest way to make yourself predictable and powerless? Have you noticed how some people bend your kindness to their will? How every smile, every reaction becomes a tool they can wield against you? And have you asked yourself who actually deserves your emotional energy and who does not? Because after 7 days of silence, I saw something I could not unsee. People's reactions are not about you. They are about control. They are about testing limits. They are about seeing what they can take before you push back or break. The invisible mechanism is subtle. When you stop reacting automatically, the social fabric around you shifts. People who thrived on your attention start recalculating. Those who depended on your validation suddenly feel exposed. Emotional detachment turns you into a kind of mirror, one that reflects the raw motives of everyone around you. During a team meeting, I stayed neutral as colleagues argued over trivial points. Normally, I would nod, laugh at jokes, or comment. This time, silence. One by one, I noticed the hesitation, the strategic glances, the subtle lowering of voices. They were not performing for me. They were measuring me. It is like stepping into a room with a thermostat. Everyone else is trying to set the temperature to their comfort. But you stop responding. You stay constant. The air shifts, the heat redistributes, but you remain untouched. Emotions are currency. When you control your deposits, you dictate the economy. Escalation comes when you realize how many people are unconsciously manipulating you all the time. That friend who always needed your advice, that colleague who feigned interest in your life, that partner who subtly guilt-tripped you into compromises. All of them were reacting to your emotional availability. Have you noticed how your silence can make someone fidget? How often do you give emotional responses that are not yours, but theirs? And how many of your so-called connections vanish when you stop feeding them reactions? The truth is uncomfortable. When you withhold emotion, you uncover patterns that were invisible before. Respect and fear are two sides of the same coin, and most people are willing to feign one while secretly exploiting the other. There was a coworker. Let us call him Mark. He was charming, persuasive, always smiling just enough to make you think he liked you. Day 3 of my detachment experiment, he tried the usual flattery. I did not react. By day 5, his tone shifted, cautious, polite, almost defensive. By day 7, he confided something personal, almost oversharing. The real reason? He needed to gauge if I was still predictable, still manipulable. Detachment is a mirror, yes, but a dangerous one. Some people see themselves. Others see the walls they thought did not exist. You do not just reveal their motives. You reveal your own boundaries, or the lack thereof. The shift in awareness hit hard. I realized the experiment was not about them. It was about me. How much of my attention, energy, and emotional labor had I given to people who did not deserve it? How many times had I allowed reactions to dictate my mood, my decisions, my sense of self? What had I been teaching people? That my emotions were available on demand, that my reactions were theirs to harvest, that my humanity was negotiable. Who are you really performing for in your daily life? How many times have you been emotionally drained by some who did not even notice your sacrifice? And if you stop giving, what would actually happen? The awareness is liberating, but also terrifying, because control is seductive. And power, real emotional power, comes not from domination, but from selective engagement. Not everyone deserves your emotions. Silence teaches more than speech ever could. Respect earned through fear is hollow. Your reactions are tools. Use them wisely. Emotional control is mastery, not cruelty. And then the unsettling personal truth emerged. I noticed how many friends disappeared when I stopped reacting. People who laughed with me, leaned on me, confided in me, vanished quietly. Meanwhile, a few remained, not because I forced them to, but because they valued me for more than what I gave them emotionally. After the experiment, I met a friend for coffee. Normally, our conversations were a mix of my encouragement and their anxieties. This time I listened. I offered measured reactions. Their demeanor shifted almost immediately. They were calmer, more present. They were not manipulating. They were not testing. They were just being. Emotional detachment is like turning the lens inward. You see the cracks in others' masks, and the cracks in your own. Choosing when to engage and when to withhold is not coldness, it is clarity. So here is the final revelation. Control your emotions, and you gain insight. Withdraw them too often, or too long, and you risk becoming a ghost in your own life. The balance is fragile. The line between strength and isolation is thinner than you think. And the haunting question that lingers, if you could never fully open again, would people love the real you, or just the reflection you choose to show? Because once you have seen the mechanics of human behavior, once you have felt the power of silence, the real challenge is not controlling others. It is deciding if you can trust yourself to feel again. And when you do, what part of yourself will you find waiting on the other side? How to use this without losing yourself. You have felt it, have not you? That moment when your reaction is automatic, anger, frustration, worry, and suddenly you realize someone else has pulled the strings. You gave away your emotional energy without even noticing. How often has this happened to you? To you. How many times did you react, and in that reaction gave them control over your day, your mind, your life? What if I told you there is a way to harness your emotional power without becoming cold, distant, or untouchable? Can you stay human and still command the room? Can you protect yourself without turning into a ghost? Here is the invisible mechanism. Emotional control is not suppression. It is strategy. It is not about becoming untouchable. It is about choosing your reactions deliberately. Think of it like holding fire in your hand. You can burn or you can illuminate. The difference is awareness. A colleague snapped at me in a meeting. Normally I would respond defensively, letting frustration spill. This time I paused. I observed, I breathed, I let the comment float past. The tension in the room did not vanish, but I was not feeding it. My calmness forced others to recalibrate. Emotions are like electrical currents. Uncontrolled, they shock the room. Controlled, they light the room. Your emotional energy is not theirs to spend. You are the bank. Now here is the dark truth. Most people will test your boundaries constantly. That friend who is just joking, that partner who constantly pushes your buttons, that coworker who thrives on drama. Every day you hand over pieces of your emotional currents, and when you do it unconsciously, you lose. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but slowly, quietly, invisibly. Have you ever realized how many of your relationships are based on you reacting, not them connecting? How often do people respect your calm versus your anger? And if you stopped reacting, what would they do next? The experiment proved it. When you pause, when you withhold, when you observe instead of reacting, the world shifts. People show their true colors. There was a time my friend Jenna called, furious over a minor misunderstanding. Usually, I would match her intensity, defend myself, explain, apologize. But after this experiment, I did not. I listened. I stayed silent when my instincts screamed to react. Slowly, she cooled down. She admitted she had been projecting her stress, not attacking me. My detachment did not hurt her. It exposed reality. My control did not make me cruel. It created clarity. Think of emotional discipline as fencing. You do not strike every attack. You block, you counter when it matters. You conserve your energy for the right moment. Silence is not apathy. Silence is power when wielded intentionally. The escalation is in the subtle realizations. You notice who thrives on your reaction. You see how much of your life has been reactive, not deliberate. You recognize manipulators instantly, and that realization feels unsettling. Are you a puppet or a conductor in your own emotional life? How many conflicts could be neutralized if you simply controlled your response? And how many friends only exist because you are predictably reactive? The moment hits personally. You realize that most emotional chaos around you is not accidental. It is engineered, unconsciously or consciously. And when you master the pause, the silence, the measured reaction, the playing field tilts in your favor. The shift comes when you see it clearly. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about emotional intelligence in its rawest form. It is about knowing the difference between engagement and depletion. It is about protecting your energy without abandoning your humanity. Imagine standing in the center of a storm. The wind lashes, the rain soaks, but your core remains dry. You choose when to step into the rain and when to stay under shelter. You are present, but you are not consumed. Controlled emotion is mastery. Uncontrolled emotion is slavery. They do not want you. They want your attention. Silence is not peace. It is strategy. Validation is a currency. Spend it wisely. Reacting constantly trains others to manipulate you. Your calmness is contagious, but only if you own it. Here is the subtle danger. Mastering this technique without self-awareness risks detachment becoming numbness. You might become the untouchable observer, cutting off connection as much as manipulation. You might win the game, but lose the warmth of life. Emotional discipline is not about building walls. It is about building gates. A former mentor of mine often said, "You can either react or reflect. Reflect long enough, and people forget you are human." I tested this one day during a heated strategy session. My silence made executives uneasy. Some respected it, some feared it. And for the first time, I realized the fine line between gaining respect and losing connection. A razor-thin edge. One wrong step, and your detachment becomes isolation. Emotional intelligence is like a lighthouse. You guide the ship safely without being swept into the storm yourself. Too bright, too distant, and the ships never approach. Too dim, and they crash into rocks. The true power is not in suppressing emotion. It is in controlling when, where, and how it flows. So here is the final question that keeps me awake at night. When you master emotional control, who are you really protecting, yourself, or the illusion of control you have built around others? And if you can walk this razor's edge without losing your humanity, will you be able to ever trust the reactions you receive? Or will you always wonder if they are real? Or just another calculated play? Because the moment you see the mechanics behind human emotion, the moment you understand the silent power of restraint, you also see the risk. The line between mastery and emptiness is thinner than you ever imagined. And when you step back into the world, fully aware, will you still recognize yourself in the mirror? Finally, you've seen it now, haven't you? The truth no one tells you about human nature. People don't just respond to who you are, they respond to what you give. Your emotions aren't weakness, but when they're uncontrolled, they become chains, because every reaction you give is a piece of control you hand to someone else. And the moment you stop reacting, everything changes. People get confused. Some respect you, some fear you, some disappear. And in that silence, you finally see the truth about them and about yourself. This experiment was never just an experiment. It was a mirror that reveals who feeds on your energy and who values you without it. But remember, detachment is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious, choosing when to feel and when to stay still. That's real power. If this changed the way you see people, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to see this truth. And if you're ready to go deeper, join the channel membership for exclusive content that reveals what most people will never understand. Because once you see this, you can't unsee it.